Pablo Escobar was born in 1949 in rural Colombia, a land of lush landscapes and stark contrasts. The Colombian countryside, with its rolling hills and vibrant culture, was a place where tradition met hardship. He grew up in Medellin, a city already grappling with poverty and crime. The streets of Medellin were a harsh environment where survival often meant bending the rules. It was a place where the seeds of ambition could either wither or grow into something formidable. From a young age, Escobar displayed a shrewdness and ambition that would later define his criminal career. Even as a boy, he had a keen eye for opportunity and a relentless drive to rise above his circumstances. His early years were marked by a determination that set him apart from his peers. He started small, engaging in petty theft and selling contraband cigarettes. These activities were his first foray into the world of crime, a world that would soon become his domain. Each small act of defiance against the law was a step towards a larger, more dangerous game. These early experiences honed his skills in deception, manipulation, and violence, qualities that would serve him well in the years to come. He learned quickly that in the underworld, power was not given but taken, and he was more than willing to take it. Escobar quickly graduated to more lucrative criminal enterprises. His ambitions grew as he realized the potential for immense wealth and power within the burgeoning drug trade. The small-time hustler was evolving into a criminal mastermind. He saw an opportunity in Colombia's burgeoning drug trade, specifically the growing demand for cocaine in the United States. The American market was hungry for the drug, and Escobar was ready to supply it. This was the beginning of his empire. With ruthless efficiency, he established smuggling routes and built a network of loyal associates. His operations were meticulously planned, and his network was both extensive and loyal. Escobar's influence began to spread far beyond the borders of Colombia. His ambition knew no bounds, and he was willing to eliminate any competition that stood in his way. Violence became a tool of his trade, and he wielded it without hesitation. The streets of Medellin ran red with the blood of those who dared to oppose him. By his mid-20s, Escobar had become a major player in the Colombian underworld. His name was synonymous with power and fear. He was no longer just a criminal, he was a force to be reckoned with. He had amassed considerable wealth and power, but his ambitions extended far beyond mere financial gain. Escobar sought to reshape the world around him, to bend it to his will. His wealth was a means to an end, not the end itself. Escobar craved legitimacy, influence, and even a twisted form of public adoration. He wanted to be seen not just as a criminal, but as a benefactor, a man of the people. His philanthropy was as strategic as it was generous. He envisioned himself as a modern-day Robin Hood, using his ill-gotten gains to win over the impoverished masses. He built schools, sports fields, and housing for the poor, all while continuing his reign of terror. To many, he was a hero, to others a villain. His rise to power was as meteoric as it was brutal, leaving a trail of blood and destruction in its wake. The cost of his ambition was paid in countless lives, and the scars of his actions would linger for generations. His story serves as a chilling reminder of the seductive allure of power and the devastating consequences of unchecked ambition. Escobar's legacy is a complex tapestry of power, violence, and the relentless pursuit of a dream that ultimately consumed him. The cocaine trade became Escobar's springboard to unimaginable wealth and influence. His journey into the world of narcotics began with small-scale operations, but he quickly realized the potential for massive profits. He recognized the drug's potential to generate enormous profits, especially in the lucrative US market. By the late 1970s, Escobar had established a sophisticated network to smuggle cocaine into the United States, where demand was skyrocketing. Cocaine, once a niche substance, was gaining popularity at an alarming rate, and Escobar was perfectly positioned to capitalize on this growing demand. Nightclubs and parties became hot spots for cocaine use, further fueling the drug's rise. Escobar's cartel, based in Medellin, quickly established dominance over the cocaine trade. The Medellin cartel became synonymous with power and ruthlessness, overshadowing other criminal organizations. He controlled every stage of the supply chain, from production in the jungles of Colombia to trafficking across borders and distribution on the streets of Miami, New York, and Los Angeles. This vertical integration ensured maximum profits and minimal risk. His network was vast and sophisticated, employing corrupt officials, ruthless assassins, and an army of loyal followers. Escobar's wealth grew exponentially. He was not just a drug lord, he was a master strategist who knew how to manipulate and control. He amassed billions of dollars, becoming one of the richest men in the world. His fortune was so immense that he reportedly spent thousands of dollars each month just on rubber bands to hold his cash. His fortune was so vast that he had to resort to extraordinary measures to launder his ill-gotten gains. Offshore bank accounts, shell companies, and luxury real estate were just a few of the methods he used to clean his money. He bought vast tracts of land, luxury apartments, and even a zoo stocked with exotic animals. His Hacienda Nápoles became a symbol of his wealth and power, complete with a private airport and a collection of rare animals. The sheer scale of Escobar's cocaine empire was staggering. At its peak, the Medellin cartel was responsible for smuggling 15 tons of cocaine per day into the United States, generating over $420 million a week. He became known as El Patron, the boss, a testament to his absolute control over the drug trade. His influence extended beyond the cartel, affecting politics, law enforcement, and the lives of ordinary people. However, his wealth came at a terrible cost, fueling violence, corruption, and instability, not only in Colombia, but also in countries around the world. The human toll of his empire was immense, with countless lives lost and communities torn apart. As Escobar's wealth and power grew, so too did his ruthlessness. He saw himself as being above the law, a force unto himself. He used violence strategically to eliminate rivals, silence critics, and intimidate anyone who dared to oppose him. Colombia, in the grip of the cocaine trade, descended into an era of unprecedented violence and fear. Escobar's reign of terror knew no bounds. He targeted anyone who posed a threat to his empire or challenged his authority. Judges, politicians, journalists, and innocent civilians were all caught in the crossfire. Car bombs exploded in city streets, assassinations became commonplace, and fear permeated every aspect of Colombian society. The Colombian government seemed powerless to stop him. Escobar's wealth bought him influence within the government, police, and judiciary. He infiltrated institutions, bribing officials and threatening those who refused to cooperate. Those who couldn't be bought were often eliminated, sending a chilling message to anyone who dared to cross him. Colombia teetered on the brink of becoming a narco state, with Escobar pulling the strings from behind the scenes. His reign of terror left an indelible scar on the country's psyche, a stark reminder of the corrosive power of drug-fueled violence and corruption. Escobar's criminal enterprise extended far beyond the borders of Colombia. His cocaine flooded the United States, Europe, and other parts of the world, fueling addiction, crime, and social problems on a global scale. His cartel became a multinational operation, with connections in various countries and a sophisticated network for transporting and distributing its deadly product. Escobar's influence reached the highest levels of power in some countries. He forged alliances with corrupt officials, politicians, and even intelligence agencies, exploiting weaknesses in the global system to further his own interests. His money bought him silence, protection, and the ability to operate with impunity. The international community began to take notice of the growing threat posed by Escobar and his cartel. The United States in particular was grappling with its own cocaine epidemic, and Escobar's role in fueling this crisis could no longer be ignored. Pressure mounted on the Colombian government to take decisive action against the drug lord. Escobar's global reach made him a formidable adversary. He had the resources, connections, and ruthlessness to evade capture and continue his operations despite the growing international pressure. The fight against Escobar and his cartel would require unprecedented cooperation and determination from law enforcement agencies around the world. The Colombian government, under intense pressure from the United States, launched a relentless campaign to bring Escobar to justice. The stakes were incredibly high, and the pressure was mounting from all sides. The US government, deeply concerned about the flow of drugs into their country, was adamant that Escobar had to be stopped at any cost. This led to a series of high-stakes meetings and negotiations between the two nations, each trying to strategize the best way to tackle the escalating crisis. The manhunt for the drug lord became an all-consuming obsession. consuming vast resources and pushing the country to the brink of chaos. Streets were often scenes of violent confrontations, with law enforcement clashing with Escobar's men. The once vibrant city of Medellin turned into a battleground, with ordinary citizens caught in the crossfire. The relentless pursuit of Escobar strained the country's resources and tested the resolve of its people. Special units were formed, equipped with advanced weaponry and intelligence-gathering capabilities. These elite teams underwent rigorous training, preparing for the dangerous missions ahead. The government spared no expense in ensuring these units had the best equipment and intelligence available, hoping that this would give them the edge they needed to capture Escobar. The hunt for Escobar was a dangerous and complex undertaking. Each mission required meticulous planning and coordination, with soldiers often risking their lives in the process. The operations were fraught with peril as Escobar's men were well-armed and fiercely loyal. The complexity of the missions reflected the intricate web of Escobar's operations and the lengths he would go to evade capture. He had an army of loyal followers willing to fight to the death to protect him. These men were not just criminals, they were deeply devoted to Escobar, seeing him as a benefactor and protector. Their loyalty was unwavering, and they were prepared to go to any lengths to ensure his safety. This made the task of capturing Escobar even more daunting for the authorities. He also had an extensive network of informants and corrupt officials who provided him with intelligence and helped him evade capture. This network was vast and well organized, with individuals in key positions of power willing to turn a blind eye or actively assist Escobar in exchange for money or favors. This corruption further complicated the efforts of the authorities, as they could never be sure who they could trust. Bombings, shootings, and kidnappings became commonplace as Escobar fought back with brutal ferocity. His tactics were ruthless, aimed at instilling fear and demonstrating his power. The violence escalated to unprecedented levels, with innocent civilians often becoming collateral damage. The atmosphere of fear and uncertainty permeated every aspect of life in Colombia as the country grappled with the relentless onslaught of Escobar's campaign of terror. The Colombian government faced a difficult dilemma. They were determined to bring Escobar to justice, but they were also acutely aware of the potential for even greater bloodshed. The decisions they made in those tense meetings would have far-reaching consequences, not just for the immediate situation, but for the future of the nation. The weight of these decisions was immense, with the lives of countless citizens hanging in the balance. They were determined to bring Escobar to justice, but they were also acutely aware of the potential for even greater bloodshed. The resolve of the soldiers and officials was tested daily as they navigated the treacherous waters of this conflict. Each step forward was met with fierce resistance, and the path to resolution seemed fraught with insurmountable obstacles. Escobar had threatened to unleash a wave of terror if they pursued him relentlessly. His threats were not empty. He had the means and the will to carry them out. The government had to weigh the risks of provoking him further against the necessity of stopping his reign of terror. It was a delicate balance, with the potential for catastrophic consequences if they miscalculated. He had the means to make good on his threats, and the potential human cost weighed heavily on the authorities. The fear of widespread violence and loss of life was a constant shadow over their efforts. Every decision was made with the knowledge that it could lead to more bloodshed, and the human cost of this conflict was a burden that the government officials carried with them every day. Despite the risks, the Colombian government, with the support of the United States, intensified their efforts to capture Escobar. The collaboration between the two nations brought additional resources and expertise to the table, bolstering the Colombian efforts. Joint operations were launched, combining the strengths of both countries in a coordinated manhunt that aimed to finally bring Escobar to justice. They knew that his reign of terror had to end if there was to be any hope of peace and stability in Colombia. The people of Colombia longed for a return to normalcy, for a time when they could live without fear. The government's efforts were driven by this hope, the belief that capturing Escobar would pave the way for a brighter future for the nation. The stakes were incredibly high, with the future of the nation hanging in the balance. The outcome of this conflict would determine the direction of Colombia for years to come. The fight against Escobar was not just about one man, it was about reclaiming the soul of a nation and ensuring a safer, more stable future for its people.